Morning, fam. In one of my recent posts, I talked about aspects of my family court case that were extremely fraudulent. I've addressed in some other posts the civil rights violations that have occurred. And this morning, I want to talk a little bit about a couple of different things. This morning, what I'm going to talk about are the aspects of my civil rights that were violated as a parent to my children in terms of their educational information and their medical information. And I also want to address specific decisions that were rendered in terms of their medical care that I was not consulted about. So, what I'm going to talk to you guys about today is, as of 2018, when the kids were in his primary care and custody, he did things that constituted civil rights violations against me in terms of having access to their information so that I could ascertain their educational and medical well-being. So what I want to talk about today are those specific issues. At one point, both of my children were attending Richmond Christian School, and at a certain point in time, he decided he was going to pull them out of that school, that private school, and enroll them into an online program. This was all during COVID, and he did so without informing me that he did that. And so I had to go back to their prior school to try to obtain information about not only their academic standing there, but then to also determine where their educational records were transferred, because he never kept me informed about that. Now, I want you to think about whether or not you believe that that is a reasonable thing to do to the mother of children, to not even inform them of decisions that you're rendering in terms of their academics. As somebody who always did very well in school, in both high school and in college, I find that extremely disturbing that he felt a sense of entitlement to be able to not inform me about that specific information. And it just speaks to his character. It speaks to aspects of his character where he felt that my role as their mother had so little value that it didn't even deserve to be that I didn't even deserve to be provided basic information about their educational status. I also want to talk about what he did in terms of their medical care. So, without divulging too much information, I would like to state that per an email I received, and I have not been able to verify whether or not he actually did what he stated in this email, or if it was a tactic he used that was deceptive in order to try to get a reaction out of me. That's certainly a possibility too, because he was constantly dishonest in his communications. So it's possible that this was not done. It's also possible that this was done. And because when I sent follow-up questioning and I received no response, I don't know definitively whether or not what was stated in the email was actually done. I'm just going to put it out there. And then you can do with this information what you choose to. But the reason I want to mention this is I was not consulted prior to this decision being made for the care and well-being of my children. They were given experimental injections, and I think you guys can understand what I'm referring to without me coming out and saying it, okay? I was not consulted about whether or not I thought that was a reasonable decision to make for two healthy children. I also want to talk about the fact that I didn't find this out until after he supposedly did this, according to his email. And according to his email, he intended to get them boosters. So I want to mention this because I don't know what potential health complications that may have created for my children. I also want to mention that if you followed any of the recent testimony in terms of the adverse impact that those injections have had on people, I think you can understand why him doing that and not consulting me potentially set them up for health complications that could be potentially lifelong. I also want to talk about the fact that putting children or adults into any kind of medical experimentation protocol is a violation of the Nuremberg Code. And if you're not familiar with the Nuremberg Code, I strongly recommend that you educate yourself and research it. And I think you would be interested to find out that it is a human rights violation. Not only is it a civil rights violation, it is a human rights violation to do that to children or parents or, adults that are not consenting. You can't have informed consent to a medical procedure when you don't know the potential outcomes and ramifications of you participating in that. I also wanted to mention that when all of this was going on with COVID within the last few years, that was also utilized by counsel to deny me the little parenting time access that I did have in the court order. So it was further utilized as a mode of harm and civil rights violation to deny me the little parenting time that had been granted via the court. And I want to talk about the fact that Judge Mary Langer and other judges restricted my parenting time to such an extent that it was completely absurd, in order to, I believe, to enrich themselves financially through Title 4D, Title 4E funding, that sort of thing. So anytime you're getting federal funding, if you make one parent's time extremely limited, almost giving them virtually no time with the children, that maximizes the Title 4D and Title 4E funding, okay? So I want you to keep that in mind. These decisions are not being rendered in terms of what is best for the children, in terms of making sure that they're maintaining connection with both of their parents. They're doing these things in order to enrich themselves financially. So they're going to disenfranchise one parent as much as possible so that they can maximize the Title 4D and Title 4E funding. And then obviously this depends on if it's like a biological child situation or an adoptive child situation, but they're going to do these things so that it's more lucrative for them through that process. And this is obviously a huge problem because it creates a dynamic in those children where they are encouraged to believe that one aspect of their heritage, one, part of their parentage is so toxic and so problematic, and it facilitates alienation. It also causes psychological problems for the children because it encourages them to internalize this belief structure that a part of them is bad, that a part of what created them is bad. So I want to talk about this because these civil rights violations are horrendous, and these are going to potentially have lifelong negative psychological consequences for the children involved. I am by no means trying to suggest that I am a perfect parent. I am far from it. But I did always try to do my best. Were there times that I lost my temper? Absolutely. I'm human and I am flawed. I am not perfect. And there was a certain expectation that seemed to be perpetrated in court that I was supposed to live up to some unrealistic, idealized perception of what a parent should be, when he clearly wasn't living up to that. So this double standard was completely insane, completely absurd. And these judges facilitated civil rights violations. They violated the Nuremberg Code by placing my children in his care and custody when it came to their medical care. And as far as I'm concerned, they're liable for any medical issues my children may suffer in the future as a result of improper placement. I think that what they did is absolutely criminal and atrocious, and I think that they should be absolutely ashamed of themselves for what they did.